It seems cruel that there's artists we only get for a short season that give us so much, but not enough. Mac Miller makes you think of many different elements and seasons in your life. When you hear his art, there's softness and happiness, with sadness weaving its way in. It's the old cliche saying, some things are just too good to be true. That seems to be the case for Mac Miller. His music grows year by year, and weird enough, he's bigger than he's ever been, but we've been without him for some time now. This is the death of Mac Miller.
Who are you, Mac Miller?
It seems like Mac Miller is locked away somewhere where we can't find him, just lost, but as though he's still here making music. The big story that happened so fast and ended in a blink of an eye for Mac Miller, who was known to his friends and family as Malcolm James McCormick. When you dig into Mac Miller's life, we hear him talk of depression and loneliness and pressures that not many people have to go through, but also someone that covers it up with happiness, with a smile on their face, trying to make others around them laugh and smile. Mac talks openly about his sobriety and how it's an on and off again element in his life. He plainly says that he doesn't like being sober. It's not for him. He even talks about overdosing, that he doesn't want to end up that way. He doesn't want to go down in history as a rapper who got caught up in drug use and let it get the best of them. But the later years of Mac Miller, they're completely black and white from the early days of his early work. We see Mac in his last years more soulful and melodic, changing the flavor of how his music is laid out and the feel and taste of what he brings with each song. In the last moments of Mac Miller's life, he's become an artist that people are cultivated by. But just as Mac Miller is entering a new phase of his career, his life, and taking over the world with his music, it's not going to end like a fairy tale. You see Mac understanding that his life is different now. It'll never be what it was, and it's turning into something he's trying to understand. Mac Miller is dealing with the lifestyle of being famous and losing the convenience of privacy, to where every day drugs become more of a scapegoat than a moment just for fun. In Mac Miller's later life, he talks of loneliness and how it seems to haunt him. It pushes its way into his music, you can hear, but also the loneliness, a drug addiction, and then adding to the mixture with anxieties. Many know and say that Mac Miller was dealing with a broken heart as well. After 2 years of being in a public relationship with Ariana Grande, it would come out that Mac and Ariana, that the relationship had ended. They talk about it publicly. Mac seems more saddened by the end of it, and Ariana says that it was stressful and in so many words was not able emotionally to handle the on and off again sobriety of Mac. It was taking a toll on her. 2018 was a devastating year for Mac Miller for substance abuse. He's single, young, and dealing with life in his own way, but he starts to find problems. Days after his breakup with Ariana Grande, that year, 2018 May, Mac will run his vehicle off the road, hitting a telephone pole, intoxicated, running from the scene to later being caught, receiving a DUI, and arrested. That morning making bail for $15,000. He's back out and running hard. That same year, 2018, Mac will release his last album that he will ever see come out for the public, and it's met with a whole new look of Mac Miller. The last few months of Mac's life, with his new album out, he somewhat barricades himself in his home and continues to work on music, keeping busy, and essentially having another album in his pocket. He's working on trying to be sober, but having slip-ups from time to time. But as Mac enters into September of 2018, nothing is really out of the ordinary with his schedule. and what would come next would be something that Mac talked about not wanting to happen to him. On September 3rd, days before his death, Mac would give his last live performance and last public appearance, having a small show in Hollywood, looking healthy, having fun, and just celebrating his art, not knowing that he wouldn't even be alive for one more week. On September 5th is when the chain of events start to take place that lead to Mac Miller's death. Mac is mostly at home, relaxing, or in the studio, working on some projects, just hanging around town, before he starts a huge tour, playing his new album. Late that night of September 5th, Mac is at a studio. Around 11:30 p.m., Mac will start to text his dealer about pills, Oxycontin pills, starting with small talk, but then straight into what Mac is looking for. After communicating of when and what and where they'll meet, Mac's dealer says he'll message him when he's ready and meet him that night at the studio in about an hour or so. Mac says that would be great and continues working on projects. By 1 a.m., there's no word from Mac's dealer, and Mac will start texting him, asking where he's at. Mac receives no response, to where he starts to message his other dealer, asking for the same combination. She immediately responds, saying she had everything that Mac wanted, and if he even wanted a girl for some company. After they confirm a total for the drugs and the girl, it would come out to a little over $1,000. After texting his second dealer, Mac starts to hear from his first dealer again, to where the first dealer meets him at the studio and exchanges a deal. Not far after that, Mac is greeted by his date that night, a young lady who also has Mac's pills. Mac and the young lady spend more time together than they were supposed to, which will end up costing Mac a little over $3,000 for everything. Mac is talking to all three people separately through text, which will come back up later as evidence. The next day would be Mac Miller's last day, his last full day alive, that he spends mostly at home. Mac Miller's last day with his life was on September 6, 2018. He spent the day at home with a friend, laughing and relaxing, talking about his future, and that he seemed to be at peace and just truly excited. By that night, when Mac was alone, he would call his mother and talk to her for a little bit, just a friendly checkup and a I love you. It would be the last time Mac would have a long conversation with anyone. By 10:30 that night, Mac's assistant spoke to him one last time and then went home. At this point, Mac Miller is left alone in his home and never seen alive again. It's not exactly clear what Mac did that night until he made a crucial mistake. Sometime into the night, Mac takes what he thinks is one of his Oxycontin blue pills from one of the bags he received just the day before and gives himself an execution right in his home. Mac's not found till the next morning, around 11:30, by his assistant. When Mac is found, he wasn't in his bed, where he peacefully passed away in his sleep. When Mac took the pill, he essentially not long after taking it, went into a death spiral. When the fentanyl hit his bloodstream, he fell to the floor, with his face hitting it hard. And in the middle of the night, Mac Miller alone would convulse and die on his own floor. When Mac's assistant arrives around 11:30 that morning, she finds him lying face down, unresponsive, white, cold to the touch. She calls for medical assistance. When police and EMTs show up, they pronounce Mac Miller dead at 11:51 a.m. at the age of 26 on September 7th, 2018. When Mac Miller's autopsy report comes back, it shows a combination of fentanyl, cocaine, and alcohol were found in his system and said to be the cause of his death. Eventually, everyone that was involved with supplying drugs to Mac that one day with the counterfeit blue pills that were supposed to be Oxycontin, but were a cheap counterfeit containing fentanyl 50 times more potent than even heroin. It's a sad reality that there's no more birthdays, no more celebrations with friends, and millions of fans saddened by a waste of life that'll never be back. And worst of all, a mother and a father left without a son that they love and cherish. The long and lasting art of Mac Miller will continue to grow for many generations, inspiring and raising up new artists that are inspired by what Mac has done. Mac Miller, a normal son that became an icon.
Clever.